Good afternoon, everyone. If you are sitting here, you're in Theater 2, and this is Solving Tomorrow's Spectrum Challenges Today. My name is Katina Powers. I work for Cox Business, and we've got our booth right as you walk into the center today. And I'm here to introduce Christopher S. E. Argo, and he's the Director of Defense Spectrum Organization. He'll be our monitor today and enjoy the panel discussion.
Thanks very much. Okay, test. Can you hear me all right? All right. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming to our address here, which is we're talking about solving tomorrow's spectrum challenges today. I'm Chris Argo, and I'm the director of the Defense Spectrum Organization. Okay, so what I do is I have a panel of my guys, some of my best guys here, and we're going to go through that real quick. But again, I'm the director of Defense Spectrum Organization underneath DISA, and to my left I have Alan Rosner, and he's both my Gemsys and electromagnetic battle management program manager. Next to him is Andre Johnson, who's the Joint Spectrum Center director. And next to him is Howard McDonald, and he's my branch chief that is our expert on advanced wireless services and initiatives. So that's our panel here. Clearly we're going to talk about electromagnetic spectrum, so if that's what you want to hear about, you're in the right place, okay? So go to the next slide, please. Sorry I got ahead of myself, but there's our agenda, okay? So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the DSOY and who we are, and then I'll have Howard talk a little bit, Colonel Johnson talk a little bit, and then Alan speak a little bit about their perspective areas as far as EMS is concerned. Okay, so I'm an Army signal officer, many years experience, and retired from the Army, tactical guy, okay? And so what we exist for is that when the commander pushes the push to talk on the radio, or a commander says launch, okay? Which launch means a number of things. That could be a ballistic missile platform or an aircraft cockpit. It can be anything, okay? But what we want to make sure is the path is clear, so when that happens, he knows he's going to be successful. And again, I'm just going to harken back to my tactical signal days of being a battalion signal officer for an infantry unit down at Fort Stewart, Georgia, in the middle of the swamps there, and got a handset thrown at me by my battalion commander because we were getting interfered with, you know what I mean? It's just, it happens. So we're here for DoD to ensure that doesn't happen. So the rules of engagement is all my guys have one slide, okay? So we're all going to talk one slide. That's it. And then I gave you the bottom line up front. And again, you know, key is access, secure, and direct access to EMS. That's what we're here for. So next slide. Okay, so this is the DSOY, which is to drive our motivating force behind DSO is that we inspire and empower people to solve tomorrow's challenges today. And so why did I say that? And that's my only slide I have, but I've been in the organization for about a year, okay? Actually, it's a year and 2 weeks, to be honest with you. So when I got here, I have all these magnificent engineers, program managers, and the like across the board. Some of these guys were working here when I graduated from high school, and they're still here. So there's definitely some expertise here. So if you take, for instance, Alan's been here for a while, and then Commander Johnson's been here for a total of 4 months, okay? And then you have Howard, who's also been here for a number of years. So, you know, if you add up Colonel Johnson and my time here, we've been here about 15 months, okay? But these other two guys, they've got almost 30 years of experience developing spectrum solutions for all of DoD. So that just gives you an idea of why. And the reason I say, you know, solving tomorrow's challenges today, we developed this as an organization, taking input from everybody across the board. You know, we watched the Simon Sinek video. One true book about why that I've read, I know is, I'm not trying to push a book here, but The Wright Brothers by John McCullough, okay? And you know, why did the Wright brothers do what they did? Well, they wanted to fly, okay? A powered aircraft. So, but they were determined to do that. And so, you know, I came to this organization where people are just tremendous and want to know why everyone gets out of bed, put their feet on the ground in DSO and runs to work. You know what I mean? It's a tremendous organization that focuses on solving challenges all the time to make better tomorrow better. So that's DSO, that's who we are. We're underneath DISA, okay? I know you've heard a number of times. DISA is the unit of action for DoD CIO, okay? If DoD CIO or the SecDef needs something, he turns to DISA and DISA kind of makes it happen. Best example, been overused case, but it's a great case, and that is CVR employed at the beginning of COVID-19. DISA employed CVR for DoD, a tremendous success. I was working in an Army command at the time, and it was completely successful. That's what we do for electromagnetic spectrum in DSO, okay, on a daily basis. We come up with capabilities, tools, and expertise so that the warfighter and the commanders have access when they need it, when they're needed. And right now, the world is very congested, contested with peers, services, and we want to make sure it's all deconflicted and clear. So that's it from my perspective. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Howard, and he can talk a little bit about AWS. Next slide, please.
Can everyone hear me? Good. When I was told I had one slide to brief, I was thinking, well, that's analogous to DoD operations where we operate in the current constrained environment. And so my one slide, there's a lot of information to unpack. What we did was divide, there's an unspecified timeline here, and divided that timeline in the world of era of humans, which we are currently in, and we've been in that era since Marconi invented radio waves. Sir, I started in 1985, so I have at least 30 years supporting the organization, and my professional career has been working in this area of humans. And we are rapidly leaving this era of humans and entering the era of ecosystems. The goal is to reduce the timeline of the area of ecosystems so that it's not as long as the area of humans, so we can start actually operating in the electromagnetic spectrum, which is the far right area of machines. I'm going to start at the bottom of this slide. There's some Latin legalese, ex post and ex ante. From an engineering perspective, ex ante is rules and guidelines that are established before something happens, and ex post is what happens after the ex ante rules or guidelines are violated. The best way to think about that is a traffic light. They're there to control, manage traffic. But what happens if people run a red light? Well, you got seatbelts. So the red light's the ex ante, the seatbelt is the ex post. And in the area of humans, the goal has always been to exploit the ex ante realm of spectrum management, where the goal is interference-free operations. And that's achieved through use of generally static databases, analytical tools, physics-based analysis, and it takes a while to, which is the calendar speeds, takes a while to come up with spectrum sharing solutions to enable coexistence between DoD and other DoD organizations, federal government, and the commercial entities. I'm actually the Advanced Wireless 3 program manager. A number of the capabilities listed here on this slide are within my portfolio. The one I'll highlight two here to emphasize the area of humans, which is the early entry portal. AWS3 licensees submit what are called coordination requests through that portal, and they're asking for permission to turn on sectors in the 1755, 1780 megahertz band. It's an uplink LTE band. We have 60 days to turn an answer around. So that's kind of the time frame we're talking about currently with respect to sharing spectrum with the commercial world, the commercial mobile broadband providers. The other capability here is called the Spectrum Management Coordination System. It's a 2025, 2110 sharing system, was just deployed 3 months ago, and that capability will enable DoD to share spectrum with the broadcast auxiliary service folks. Think the white vans that roll around the street with the big dish on top and the reporter from the sidewalk reporting. That's who DoD is sharing spectrum with through this SMCS. Calendar timelines are a little reduced, but we're still talking days, if not weeks, to coordinate DoD access to 2025 and share that with the broadcasters. We're leaving that era rapidly, and we're entering the area of machines or ecosystems where we have the analytical capabilities that underpin SMCS and the early entry portal are being automated in such a way that when a request comes in to access spectrum in a shared spectrum environment, the answer should be turned around relatively quickly, within hours. Some of the capabilities here that are developmental, they're not deployed yet, are the TARDIS 3, which is the Citizen Band Radio. It's a mouthful, Citizen Band Radio, Telecommunications Advanced Research and Dynamic Spectrum Sharing Systems. Basically what that is DoD will register an operation and the commercial users of that spectrum will vacate that band during the time that DoD needs to use the band in that area. The AMBIT American Midband Initiative Team Automated Spectrum Coordination System. This is the 3.45 gigahertz band. This is a capability where those analytical tools are automated and that answer is given relatively quickly within a few hours. The far right, the area of machines, that's where we're focused, and everything we've done to date is providing the framework for what we mean by the area of machines, where you have cognitive systems making decisions to access the spectrum based upon rules that are loaded into those systems, based upon what's going on in the electromagnetic environment, and it's done in real time. There are a number of challenges with that, not the least of which is that ex post area where what happens if interference occurs. We're still working on those ex post challenges in that area of machines. And sir, I'll leave it there.
Okay.
Wait for questions.
Okay, super. Thanks, Howard. And of course, to where we need help from industry is doing the best to deconflict and share the spectrum that Howard just referred to. Okay, next I'm going to hear from Colonel Andre Johnson, who's the Joint Spectrum Center Director. And again, like he's been in the job since beginning of August, and let him talk a little bit. Over.
Yes, good afternoon. Again, Colonel Andre Johnson, Director of the Joint Spectrum Center. Some of the key things I want to get across today, kind of right there at the top of the slide. Quite often, he talked quite a bit about that strategic level, some of the things we're doing here within the DSO that are far out and looking, far-reaching. But really, within the Joint Spectrum Center, we spend a lot of our time in an operational and that tactical realm. So quite often we're thought of as those EMS tools, those tool sets needed to take care of things down at the tactical level. But I wanted to kind of foot stomp today, we're a lot more than that. And so I wanted to share some of the things that I've learned in just my short time and what we kind of bring to the fight. When you think of JSC in the future, I want you to think from the perspective of not just tools, but we bring that expertise. We're DoD's subject matter experts. Mr. Argo talked a little bit about that. We've got folks with a great deal of experience with the electromagnetic spectrum perspective, and we bring that to bear when needed from a DoD perspective. Also, we think of it from the perspective of training. So training not only for our U.S. forces, but for our coalition forces when needed. So if we need to be in a combined fight, and from a perspective of we're going to need spectrum, how do we train to the right level to those that we can train? But that's an important thing that's provided by our DoD experts in the subject matter expert area, but also leading edge capability. And we do all that at that operational and tactical level to make sure that we're promoting our warfighters' advantage in the EMS battle space. A battle space that it's becoming more and more important and relevant to many others that may not spend that time in that discussion area all the time. But I'll tell you, in my short time here, I think I figured out my job was we're going to take care of everything from toasters to weapon systems. It all has to be connected. If it's being connected in some way with ones and zeros, it's going to traverse the electromagnetic battle space. And so we need to make sure that that's available for our warfighters. I wanted to kind of make sure I passed on, not only do our folks provide that expertise, they're available to deploy. They're deployed when necessary to support our combatant commanders in the fight when necessary, but primarily to train those who are going to be a part of a joint task force or out front supporting an initiative. So you got to think of them not only as the expertise, but also those that are available when required to move forward and be forward operating from a spectrum perspective. I also want to pass on the fact that when we talked about expertise, we provide engineers that have been doing electromagnetic, we call it E3, so electromagnetic environmental effects, ensuring those effects are provided for our Joint Chiefs of Staff and our combat commanders. From the perspective of, one, we work with the Joint Requirements Oversight Council to ensure that if there's a new system that's coming online to be deployed, it is safe and survivable from an electromagnetic spectrum perspective. We're involved in that process. It's probably not known, but that's an important thing to recognize that we bring to bear. Again, when we're talking about from the perspective of, so HERO is another thing that is talked about often, so hazards of electromagnetic radiation ordinances. So we have to make sure those things are safe before they're deployed. So we're involved in that process, and that's our folks, our experts that are within the Joint Spectrum Center. Also wanted to pass on an important point that it's not just DoD and our coalition entities. We're also involved with, we talked a little bit about crossing the line for our commercial space, right? So our mobile service providers, those systems that need to be utilized within areas that are near our bases. We need to make sure that we can function and they can function as well in the same space. That has to be analyzed, and we use our engineers to do that. So new capabilities being deployed by our mobile service providers, whether it be T-Mobile, Verizon, whoever that might be. We're responsible for making sure that we can do that safely, and our systems can still function as they need to. Some of the only other thing I would tell you is probably the big thing. You saw there in the bottom right corner there, getting those world-class capabilities out there. When I say we're more than just tools, we're giving that decision-making capabilities for our combatant commanders. We're involved with making sure that happens from a perspective of getting systems like the Global Electromagnetic Spectrum Information System, or the MBEM, as we call it, our Electronic Magnetic Battle Management System. These are things that allow us to start to concentrate and focus on getting the advantage needed by our warfighters in the electromagnetic space. And that's really what we're going to talk about. I'm lucky enough to have the program manager for both of those systems within the Joint Spectrum Center, working for DSO and its mission set for DISA. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Alan Rosner.
Okay, thanks, Colonel Johnson. I'll go ahead and introduce Alan. But first, Colonel Johnson, like I said, he's been in the job 4 months, but he's really our action guy. He remains in contact with the Combatant Command J6s and the DISA field office commanders or directors, clearly on a weekly basis, to ensure we're fulfilling their requirements and needs. And so that's what he does, and he actually launches NCOs to problem areas to deconflict spectrum or to ensure we got the bases covered. So, but he does have one guy who is working the programs and tools to assist the commanders at each of the combatant commands, and that's Alan Rosner. And like I said, he's the program manager for the electromagnetic battle management and the global information system. So Alan, I'm going to hand it over to you to talk EMBM. Over.
All right. Thank you, sir. Hope you can hear me okay. First, let's clarify. I wasn't here when you graduated from high school. I'm certain of that. Hopefully I was in kindergarten or something like that. But I've been around the organization for about 17 years now, working different programs. Gemsys was first, the Global Electromagnetic Spectrum Information System. That consists of a lot of tools that the department uses to support its current use of the electromagnetic spectrum worldwide. The most important tools that are in Gemsys are things that support frequency assignment globally for the Department of Defense, tools that support equipment, anything that is built that is using the electromagnetic spectrum for the department has to be coordinated. Has to be coordinated in the U.S. and it has to be coordinated with host nations around the world. We have capabilities to support that. And we also have a large information repository that we call the Joint Spectrum Data Repository. And that is both a warehouse of all of this related spectrum information, but it's also a number of tools on top of that that allow you to find meaning in all of that data. So we use things like dashboards, geographical displays, things of those natures to be able to mash up that information in a way that it can provide meaning to people. And across the organization and the department, we've seen, kind of gains already in terms of how quickly people can translate information into meaning from some of those capabilities. And they all move forward into what the slide is about, which is a new program that we started in FY21 here called Electromagnetic Battle Management. Now this is focused on combatant commands and the Joint Task Force that might get stood up in support of operations, and it supports their ability to plan and manage the electromagnetic spectrum during operations. So there are a number of requirements that we're working on for EMBM, and the most important of which is just situational awareness. So that is just trying to understand at any one given time what's going on inside the electromagnetic spectrum for any given area. So there's a number of actors, right? Howard here works closely with commercial providers. There are host nations that use the EMS for their own purposes. The department has a lot of its own uses for it. There's also the enemy. As I like to tell people, there's only one EMS and it's all shared. And so even if there are operations near adversarial space, we have to consider that in the overall picture of the EMS. And so that's what we're trying to do there, is get a better improved picture of situational awareness, because without that picture, we can't do the other things that need to be done, which is moving forward to support a commander with decision support. So what can a commander do inside of that EMS domain space? What are his options? He gets plans from the components that flow up as part of the joint planning process, right? So what can he do with those plans? Can he fly all the UAVs that he wants to? Is it really possible? As I like to tell people, that UAVs and stuff, they don't have fiber connected to them. They all use the EMS in some capacity to move information up and down from those systems. And that's true of virtually all tactical systems. And so the commander has to be able to evaluate all of his options, or we call them courses of action, right? And make determinations. And EMBM is focused on being able to do that quickly and completely with the knowledge of what it has inside of the electromagnetic spectrum space for that given area of operations. And then beyond that, it's ultimately trying to seek command and control. So you'll hear a lot about JADC2, and if you're not aware, there's a session tomorrow morning talking about JADC2 that Mr. Argo will participate in. And if you look at the OV1 for JADC2, the EMS goes across all of the domains there for JADC2. And so we see EMBM as the capability provider for the EMS space for JADC2. And so it's very important in that regard. And the last area is training. And so that's the ability to be able to train in a realistic environment that all of the users of the EMBM capabilities will be able to provide for a realistic training environment so that when they actually have to support operations, they're able to do it effectively. I say that it's a lot that it's fundamentally about time. It's about how long it takes to make decisions because decisions in the EMS move at the speed of light, and so everything is pretty much instantaneous. And the department has to have the ability to respond very, very quickly, particularly if it's an adversarial action that occurs in the EMS. They need to know what their courses of action are and what they can do to respond to that. So those are all of the areas that we're focused on for EMBM. There is a close relationship between EMBM and Gemsys. The data repository that I mentioned that we have under Gemsys, the Joint Spectrum Data Repository, is being leveraged already in supporting situational awareness for EMBM going forward. And I think that's all I have on this, if you want to.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Just to reiterate a little bit what Alan he went over a lot, but he talked about the UAVs flying, and that's what I meant when I said when a commander says launch, he wants to ensure his aircraft are going to be able to fly without being interfered with. So also, training. We do everything. We train in order to be successful on the battlefield. Period. So training is key, and facilitating the training is clearly very important. That's another part of EMBM. I'm not going to try to put Alan on the spot here, but I think EMBM was originally going to be part of Gemsys at first. Is that correct? And then it was decided to make it a separate program. Is that correct?
Right. So there's a significant amount of overlap between the requirements there. Our operational sponsor, Stratcom, really wanted to make sure the program was focused on the requirements of supporting a joint task force, and so that was part of the reason. But at the same time, the adaptive acquisition framework came along. Gemsys is a traditional acquisition, and we wanted to use the adaptive acquisition framework for EMBM, and so that's part of the reason we stood up a new program.
Okay, Alan, thanks very much. Great feedback. Okay, with that is all we have presentation-wise today, but I'll be willing to open the floor to questions if anyone has any questions to ask. Over.
You hear me?
Not yet.
Now we can.
How about now?
Yeah,
Yes.
there you go.
Hi.
Absolutely.
Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez, Army Reserves. I sat in a talk earlier with the AI used for cybersecurity, and one of the speakers made the comment that AI is not the solution for all our problems. And I feel like when people talk about 5G, maybe you can say the same thing, that 5G isn't going to solve all our problems. Does DISA and DSO have any role to play in identifying the correct spectrum for the correct use case of 5G? And if so, can you give an example?
Okay, so I think the question was, are we involved with the 5G and making sure there's deconfliction between what the 5G community is looking for and what we need to do on the military side of the house?
Yeah, in general, use cases for 5G within DoD. Do we have any?
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to ask Howard if he can touch on that a little bit. Howard? over?
Yeah, so use cases within DoD. Internet of Things, obviously, where smart warehouses. So I'll step back. There are a number of advanced 5G, I'll call them advanced concept research and development programs that are going on right now within DoD. They are focused on Internet of Things, smart warehouse, obviously big bandwidths to move a lot of data, remote control, things of that nature. Relative to the specific bands that are being used, that's really dependent on the use case. So when 5G first came out, people were thinking, well, we're talking gigahertz, spec 20, 30 gigahertz, and that's not the case. 5G is somewhat spectrum agnostic. It's what are you using, what's your use case? So if you want to move huge amounts of bandwidth in short distances, yeah, 20 gigahertz is probably good. If you want to move more bandwidth over long distances, you're probably talking in the 1 to 3x gigahertz range. My opinion, 5G opens up significant opportunities to share spectrum and to be able to balance national security and economic security. So you can envision a future where DoD use of 5G is occurring along and in the same area as commercial use of 5G, and those machines and systems that are making that determination as to who accesses the spectrum when, that's all automated in the machines. That's the era of machines that I was referring to earlier. A lot of work needs to be done to get to that vision. Hopefully I asked your question.
Okay. Follow-up question, over.
Yeah, Art Wonder, AT&T. Colonel, you failed to mention, you said T-Mobile, Verizon, you forgot us, so that's cool. Get me a beer later, that's fine.
Just make that for the record.
There you go. So appreciate you guys being on the panel, and I think I appreciate the complexity and the importance of what you're doing in your different areas. Question, so you talked about IoT a little bit, you just did, but with the theme of the conference being a partnership with industry, and then General Skinner mentioning the collaboration and extensive use of 5G when somebody asked him, the question of how he was going to use 5G, he said extensively. So the question is, CONUS is one thing. What about OCONUS and spectrum limitations in terms of spectrum holdings, and how do we operate, especially from not an IoT, but an IOBT, Internet of Battlefield Things, and just if you can comment on that and maybe some spectrum sharing initiatives or something. Thanks.
Alan, do you want to start?
Okay.
They said you could
Howard?
Address host nation.
He said you could start.
Well, I think we'll divide this one between Howard and Alan.
Okay, so from the capabilities that we build, DoD has to operate globally, and all of our capabilities are designed to consider global use. So it doesn't matter from my perspective whether it's 5G, for what band they want to operate in. We have to put in place the capabilities to help support not only the management of it, but the operations of it. So that means we'll ultimately have to be able to model it if the department is going to utilize it, or a near entity in the red, green, or blue, gray space, whatever you want, is going to be making use of that. So if we're operating in a host nation and we're up against 5G or some other type of commercial operation, we're going to have to be able to consider that in the modeling and simulation that we do. But the tools and capabilities that we provide have to operate globally because that's the space that the department exists in. Yes, we have to consider the U.S. and P part of it as well, but really that's just one host nation from my perspective. So,
Howard, go ahead. Over.
Is it possible to go back to my slide?
Absolutely. There you go.
So I think that would provide a good framework for my answer to that question. So area of humans, constrained operations. We got rules, the NTA manual, FCC rules, regulations, et cetera. That's where DoD and the commercial world has heretofore operated. In the area of ecosystems, you can view that as congested environment, which is what we're seeing today, where increased sharing with commercial world. I mean, I was on the call yesterday with AT&T talking about how we're going to share 1755, 1780. And so there again, it's rule-based operator agreements, but we're applying technology to make those operator agreements more automated and getting to a quicker agreement. In the area of machines, we're talking about contested operations. And so depending on the mission, it might be a peacekeeping mission where DoD needs to make sure that our operations are not interfering with the other peacekeeping services or the host nation that we might be doing something like that. And then you've got the full, we're going down and kicking the door down. And at that point, DoD needs the capabilities to operate through that contested environment where the enemy is actively trying to deny that access to spectrum. And in that case, sharing is kind of out there. We're just trying to get the mission done. And if we interfere with somebody, sorry.
Howard, have you had any experience with the TTXs so far, the DSA TTXs that you refer to in the era of machines? TTX being tabletop exercise.
Yeah,
sorry,
tabletop exercises. There are capabilities, dynamic spectrum access, which has been a buzzword for, over a decade. DoD is now has a number of prototypes, DSA tactical targeting networking technology, TTNT, and that system was the focus of these tabletop exercises. And we're going through the process of, if a DSA-enabled system shows up at your test and training range, possibly scaled to your theater, what are the things that you currently do, and do those things that you currently do to manage the spectrum. Area of humans is spectrum management, area of machines is spectrum operations. What needs to be done to move that spectrum paradigm from managing the spectrum, kind of the beans and bullets perspective, to letting the machines do their own thing and make decisions on their own. And those TTXs have the operators, the range managers, the spectrum managers involved to talk through some of the challenges of how do we conduct spectrum operations in a world where the machines are making decisions on their own at their clock speeds instantaneously. So those are the tabletop exercises. We're going through those discussions.
Roger, Howard. Thanks very much. And of course, we're trying to get as much AI and machine learning done for those machines to make those decisions. So yes, ma'am.
Hi, Kimberly Underwood from FCA's Signal Magazine. I wanted for Mr. Rossner, wanted to ask a little bit more about the MBEM. Could you talk about kind of the timing and next steps, kind of what you hope to accomplish in FY22? I think you said it started in FY21 and you're working on the requirements. And also, could you explain how you're leveraging a common data layer and talk about the cloud-hosted aspects of it? Thank you.
Okay, so the first part is, what are we doing right now? So immediately we got started. There's some terms in the adaptive acquisition framework that everybody needs to get a little used to. The first is having a minimum viable product or capability release. And the rules in there essentially say that you need to have that capability within a year of beginning the program. So we got focused immediately on what we could do to enhance situational awareness, and we got started on that work immediately because we had a vehicle to do that. We're working now on extensions to the Joint Spectrum Data Repository to be able to support enhancements to situational awareness. So we will be in a position next spring to put that minimum viable product out there, and then we will continue to enhance the situational awareness capabilities over the FIDUP as we go forward. Secondarily, the other important aspect of EMBM is the whole joint planning process side of things, and we have an OTA that's in process right now in support of that. And there we're looking for, essentially it's new ideas in support of the joint planning process and bringing these capabilities together. As I said, you need to understand what the overall situational awareness picture is in order to be able to really do anything. We look for a capability that will marry our situational awareness capabilities with that joint planning process side of things. And then you also asked about our use of cloud capabilities. So we use currently today through Gemsys all of the DISA cloud capabilities, MilCloud 1, MilCloud 2. We're in the process of transitioning our systems into the C2S environment. We're very much excited and interested in being able to move to a DevSecOps type pipeline, which those commercial cloud capabilities give us, and being able to move quickly, with the end result being that we want to be able to turn capabilities from requirements into release as quickly as possible. And so that's what's attractive to us about all of that, and the tool sets that come with the commercial cloud capabilities as well.
That answer your questions, ma'am? Okay. Okay, anyone else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, one more. Since you have CBRS on the slide and you mentioned spectrum sharing, I believe there are networks out now using CBRS systems, so I'm just wondering if you had any feedback on how that is working. Are the DoD radar systems being protected, I guess, as intended with these commercial systems in place now?
Let's see. Short answer, I haven't heard any negative stories. I haven't heard of interference events. So one will presume that the capabilities that exist today within CBRS is working for sharing.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Claudia DiCarlo, Sabre Technology Solutions, headquartered right here in Baltimore, Maryland. So welcome to Charm City. On the previous slide, I saw multi-source data fusion. So that's an area that my company is very interested in, and I wanted to know if you can speak specifically about what you see and what you need with respect to multi-source data fusion, and where you see the human in the loop or on the loop in that process. Thank you.
Do you want me
Okay,
to?
yeah, Alan.
So we're very much focused on that problem today with the situational awareness improvements that we're making. We do not have all of the data that we need ourselves to create this picture of the electromagnetic, as we call it, operational environment. So we are focused on fusing data from a number of providers that have that information. And I can't talk to you in detail about kind of how we're doing all of that, but we are leveraging a lot of commercial capabilities to help support the fusion of that data. Because of the timeline that we have, we are working to mitigate and exchange information and feeds that are already available and leverage those feeds as much as possible to create and bring them into that overall picture of the electromagnetic operational environment. Put another way, the data is all out there, and it's a matter of finding the right data and being able to manipulate and use that data in the way that you want to be able to represent it so that a user can actually look at it and understand it and get meaning out of it for the activity or operation that they're trying to support. And so that's where all the work is as I like to say, is mashing the Play-Doh around so that it looks like something that somebody understands.
Super. Thanks, Alan. Claudia, does that answer your question? All right, thanks. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, well, I think that's going to be rounds complete here, but real quick, General Skinner did touch on it this morning during his opening comments, and DISA is a combat support agency, and his number one priority for all of us is to facilitate command and control, and that's what we're trying to do from the EMS perspective. He also mentioned that the center of gravity is data, okay, and trying to take advantage and use the data to the maximum extent possible. And like Alan just said, the data's all out there, we just need to harness it. So that's it from us, from the Defense Spectrum Organization. We'll give a plug. Here's our pamphlet that we're handing out at the at our table at the DISA site. This has all the information that we talked about this morning, pretty well detailed, and it's very informative. So we put a lot of time into preparing this to inform you. So please stop by the table, or Colonel Griggs is in the back.
In the back right
if
there.
you see him, and he'll be happy to hand one to you as you're walking out. So thanks, everybody. Any follow-up questions? All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Have a great Spectrum Day.
All right, I'm out. Oh, you're Eskimo. It has been, currently there is a lot of focus for us on operating, but there are a lot of...
Hi, how are you doing?
John Hickey, how are you doing?
Andre Johnson.
I used to be a former commander at the GSC from 2008 to 2011. I'm an Army guy.
That's something that we know.
No, that's all right.
Then I went over to cyber side. They settled in.
So there's at least 2 alumni I've seen here so far. I just saw my predecessor.